Hello and welcome back to my garden. As you can see, my onions that I've had here all winter are doing quite well, pretty well actually. Some of the leaves are looking a bit sketch at the moment, but that might be because, again, the thaws and the freezes and the warm weather, and then we just got 2.5 inches of rain overnight, what's today, Sunday, and I think it was Friday night, so Friday, Saturday, something like that. Either way, everything is absolutely saturated, so I really won't be doing any gardening projects today. But what I will be doing is going over some of the polls and quizzes that I've posted up on the YouTube community page. Now, if you're unaware or not familiar, if you go over to YouTube over on the, I think you can only do it on the computer. I'm not sure if you can do it on mobile. If you can, let me know in the comments below. But either way, if you go over to the computer, if you go over to my YouTube channel homepage, and up top there is a link for community. If you click on that, you should see a ton of different posts that I've put up, and that's also where I'll let you guys know if I'm going to be sick, on vacation, something else has happened. And what I have been posting up over there recently is a lot of different polls and quizzes, because, well, I just one day thought that'd be something interesting, and some of you tend to like it, and more of you are answering the polls and the quizzes, which is fun. And I think it's just a fun thing to do. Test your gardening knowledge and also see where people stand with certain things. So let's start going over some of those answers that you've given. So a couple weeks ago, I asked, which would you rather have, a walled garden or an open meadow? It's actually a 50-50 split. So that's actually interesting. Me personally, I think I'd like a walled garden, but again, this is a personal preference thing. There's no right or wrong answer. The next one I did was I did another poll, and that was, this year you're going to grow more vegetables or more flowers. And a majority of you actually said more flowers. So the next question I asked was, how much garden would you like to have? A 1/4 acre, 1/2 acre, 1 acre, 2 to 4 acres, or out to the horizon? 10% of you answered 1/4 acre, 20% of you answered 1/2 acre, 10% of you answered 1 acre, 20% of you answered 2 to 4 acres, and 40% of you answered out to the horizon. It's really interesting. Then we start getting into some of the quizzes that I asked. The potato originated from Peru, South Africa, or Walmart? Thankfully, none of you answered Walmart. Majority of you answered Peru. So that's where the potato actually originated from, and it was brought back to Europe, I believe, by the Spanish. If I'm wrong, you can let me know below. Either way, the next one was, since we're on to the topic of food here, can you eat a dahlia tuber? And 100% of you answered yes. And then we have another poll, and it was simply asking, which do you prefer, or which one do you like, rose or peony? 64% of you answered roses. Interesting. Oh, I actually like them both, and if I had a both poll, I imagine that quite a few of you may have actually answered that as well. Now, this question was controversial. And I'm thinking some of you are a little biased. Which YouTube garden would you like to tour in person? Garden answer, Klaus Dalby, Impatient Gardener, or Growing a Green Finger? Majority of you answered Growing a Green Finger. 25% of you answered garden answer. If you guys don't know who Klaus Dalby is on YouTube, go check him out. He's a Dutch gardener. He's also an author, and he's got a bunch of other things going on, but he has a beautiful garden over in the Netherlands. And the Impatient Gardener has a nice garden up in Wisconsin, I believe. If you haven't checked her out either, go check her out. She's pretty fun, and she does some interesting stuff with plants and her battles and challenges with deer. The next one was just simply asking, which one? Paradise Garden or French Renaissance Garden? And 89% of you answered Paradise Garden versus 11% who answered French Renaissance Garden. Okay, the next one is, did you know that roses are the national flower? That's a 50-50 on that one. But yes, the rose is the national flower. All right, so the next one is, who brought apples to America? Pirates, Pilgrims, or Vikings? Thankfully, none of you said pirates. Some of you said Vikings, and that would be a pretty good guess. I didn't actually know until I Googled the answer, because that's what I try to do when I ask these questions. I Google the answer first, and I look into this stuff and do a little bit of research. The answer actually is Pilgrims. All right, we're in the greenhouse to try to deaden some of the noise from my neighbor using his chainsaw. Question. The next one I asked was, which one, a cottage garden or an Italian garden? 78% of you said cottage garden. 22% of you said Italian garden. Kew Gardens, if you're not familiar with Kew Gardens, it's a large garden, botanical gardens set up over in England. I believe it's in London or just south of London. I'm not sure of the exact location, but either way, it's a large garden in England, and it's quite old. So the question was, how old is Kew Gardens? And you had three choices to choose from: 265 years old, 100 years old, or 1,000 years old. And the correct answer is, as of 2024, 265 years old. 20% of you answered 100 and 20% of you answered 1,000. That's 1,000 is quite old, although not completely out of the realm of reason, because there are some cathedrals and other things over in England that are literally 1,000 or more years old. So, which is pretty wild. It's an old country. Next one was just a simple poll. Which one do you prefer? Sunflowers or roses? 56% of you said sunflowers. 44% of you said roses. The next one is, apples were originally from. This one was a little tricky. Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, or Turkey. 10% of you answered Afghanistan, 50% of you answered Kazakhstan, and 40% of you answered Turkey. And the correct answer is Kazakhstan. The next one is, do you have a greenhouse? Polytunnel or hoop houses do apply. So I was looking just for any sort of greenhouse type structure. And 17% of you said yes, and 83% of you said no. Get yourself a greenhouse. The next poll was, do you watch any homesteading channels? Yes or no? And 89% of you answered yes, and 11% of you answered no. It's just interesting to see how I'm not necessarily interested in them raising cows or chickens or goats or anything like that, but it is interesting to see how they handle certain gardening tasks and how they raise their fruits or vegetables or even flowers. How many varieties of daffodils are there? I had no clue. And I was actually shocked. The answers were 127,000 or 1,200. The correct answer is, which 75% of you got, 27,000. Blew my mind. I had no idea that there were that many different varieties of daffodils. So if you have to Google an answer, that's fine too. I mean, this is not like a college exam or anything like that. We're just having some fun here on the internet, so. And the next one was, should I do a video talking about the results of all the polls and quizzes we've done here? 67% of you answered yes. That's why we're doing this video. That and the ground is saturated, like I said, and tomorrow when you guys are watching this, which should be Monday, it's supposed to be raining again. So that's not helping the gardening situation any. It's helping the plants. We are fairly warm right now. We're in our low 60s here in eastern North Carolina. And the plants are starting to come to life, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because I'm sure we're going to get another freeze before our last freeze date, which is allegedly April 1st. Either way, the next one was, again, sort of a preference poll. Which would you rather have, or which one would you pick, a concrete path or a brick path? 70% of you answered brick path. 30% of you answered concrete path. And maybe, again, maybe it's just a personal preference of the maintenance or the upkeep or even just the look or the style. Me personally, I prefer brick path, but to each their own. Either way, the next one is, poppies originated from North America, Western and Central Europe, or China? This one, I thought I knew the answer to, and I was wrong. The answer is Western and Central Europe. I was certain it was China. I was so wrong. 55% of you also answered China, and 18% of you answered North America. But no, it is Western and Central Europe. Who knew? Tulip Mania was a song, a 17th century craze, or a disease? Thankfully, nobody answered song. But 67% of you answered 17th century craze, which it was. And then 33% of you answered disease, which it was not. Although maybe mental disease. Marigolds originated in China or South Central America? I thought it was China again. I was wrong again. Marigolds actually originated in South Central America. I did not know. I thought maybe China again, but it's because there's actually a surprising number of plants that do originate in China, but marigolds is not one of them. Which garden would you like to visit? I can't pronounce the first one. It's a Japanese garden in Japan. It's apparently quite large and famous. Great Dixter in England or Versailles in France. 22% of you answered the Japanese garden. 67% of you answered Great Dixter over in England. And 11% of you answered Versailles. Alrighty, the next one is which one is a famous gardener? Capability Brown, Don Knotts, or Brian Cox? Thankfully, none of you answered Don Knotts, who is a famous American actor, comedian. 40% of you answered Brian Cox, which is incorrect. Brian Cox is a Scottish actor, I believe. And 60% of you did answer correctly as Capability Brown. If you don't know who Capability Brown is, do a quick Google search. Incredibly hardworking guy. Again, if you don't know who Capability Brown is, just do a quick Google search. Which do you prefer, daffodils, tulips, or both? 25% of you said daffodils, 42% of you said tulips, and 33% of you said I need both. And then the last three questions we have here. Which do you prefer, hydrangea or forsythia? 89% of you answered hydrangea, with only 11% of you answering forsythia. I've had forsythia. I'm not a big fan. I prefer hydrangea. Unfortunately, I can't grow it that much here because the deer, they just love to eat it. I do have a few hydrangea bushes around, and it's always a struggle trying to keep the deer off of the hydrangeas. But the next one is how long to build Versailles? That's that big fancy French garden thing that I mentioned earlier. 25 years, 100 years, or 50 years? Thankfully, none of you answered 25 years because that would just be super duper quick. And way back in the 1600s, I think it was built, maybe 1700s. Either way, it was all basically done by hand and hard manual labor. The correct answer is 50 years. It took 50 years to build Versailles, which is also actually considering that everything was done by hand, everything was dug out by hand, everything was planted by hand. It's just an amazing amount of time. I think it's a small army that actually built it. I don't know the size of it, but maybe that'll be a poll or a quiz. What is the largest American garden? Tryon Palace, Longwood Gardens, or the New York Botanical Garden? Most of you never heard of Tryon Palace. It's just the governor's palace when North Carolina was still an English colony. It's not very big at all. Correct answer was Longwood Gardens, which 83% of you answered, which actually I was a little surprised about because I knew the New York Botanical Garden is fairly sizable, but I knew Longwood Gardens was also quite large. What I didn't know is that Longwood Gardens is over 1,000 acres. So there you go. So that's about all the questions and polls that I've done recently. I've been fairly consistent in doing the polls and quizzes for the last couple of weeks here, and I'm going to keep doing it because you guys seem to enjoy it. It's just something fun to look at on the computer there and, you know, test your gardening knowledge and, again, see how other people prefer to do things. Again, glass or plastic greenhouse, forsythia versus hydrangea, you know, how do most people feel about certain things? It's just always interesting to sort of see those responses. Do you prefer roses or peonies? You know, it's just, again, we're just having some fun here on the internet. So again, go check out that YouTube community page, scroll through, answer any and all these questions. You know, you can go back a few weeks if you want. Just have fun, answer the questions, see what's going on. Leave a comment if you'd like. I think we've had a couple of people leave comments already. So thank you to all those people. Thank you to all the new subscribers to the channel. The channel is slowly growing. I'm hoping to hit 1,000 this year. So tell your friends, families, loved ones, grumpy old guy across the street about this channel. I'm building a garden here in Eastern North Carolina, growing zone 8A. And I think I'm going to catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.